We are creating the sleekest calculator on YouTube using vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is the perfect project to practice your logical programming skills and showcase them on your portfolio, as we will be using many cool JavaScript methods and functions to make this amazing calculator work. I will be explaining all the code in detail, step by step, from the HTML syntax to the modern styling and hover effects to the intricate logical functions that we're going to use. All the buttons in this calculator work. We can add, subtract, multiply, divide, clear to reset the calculator, delete the last character in our expression, add decimals. We can do percentage calculations, toggle the number to be a positive or a negative. In essence, we're building a fully functional calculator. I recommend that you have a fundamental understanding of JavaScript before starting this tutorial. We are not going to be writing overly complex code, and I will explain all of it, but you are gonna have an easier time if you are familiar with logical operators, string methods, and functions in general. The HTML and CSS in this tutorial is relatively simple, and we will be spending the majority of our time on the JavaScript. You will learn a lot of JavaScript logic in this video, like various string methods, isNone and isFinite functions, event listeners, regular expressions, math and number objects, logical and comparison operators, and the eval function. The tools we will be using are vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, GitHub as our version control, GitHub Desktop to smoothen the process of updating our code, VS Code as our code editor, and GitHub Pages to deploy our project so we can showcase it to the world for free. If you are ready to create the best looking and best performing calculator on YouTube and learn a whole lot in the process, then let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that you have a GitHub account, because that's going to be very relevant for this tutorial. So if you don't already have one, you can create one on github.com. by either writing your email here or clicking the sign up button in the top right. And then we're simply going to enter your email, password, username, that sort of thing. Once you're signed in, it's going to look a bit like this with your profile here. You can visit your basically GitHub profile. Here you can access all your repositories. And this is basically where your code is going to live and where we are going to store our calculator. Now we're going to visit desktop.github.com and we're going to download GitHub Desktop. You can download that for Mac or Windows if you want. So you just click that button, download is going to start. You run the installer, and then when you open your application, it's going to look a bit like this. So you have your repositories that you currently are inside, and then you can, of course, open that in Visual Studio Code, which is the next step we are going to download here. So if you don't have Visual Studio Code already installed, that's the code editor I'm going to be using in this tutorial. You're free to use whichever one you want, but if you want to follow exactly what I'm doing, download Visual Studio Code at code.visualstudio.com, either for Mac or Windows or Linux, whatever you prefer. Same thing, you're going to hit the download button, you're going to run the installation, and then when you open Visual Studio Code, it's going to look a bit like this depending on your version and also your platform. So let's close that for now and open back up our GitHub Desktop. We are going to create our repository. So we're going to create a new one. We're going to click the Add button here. We're going to say Create New Repository. We are going to say it's going to be called Calculator App, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You can call this whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. We're going to leave everything else as default. We're going to click the Create Repository button. We're going to click the Publish Repository, and we're going to put this one as public. You can keep yours private if you want. Actually, you have to keep it public if you want to later on in this tutorial use GitHub Pages for free. If you don't have a paid GitHub account, you can't put a private repository on GitHub Pages. So I'm going to leave this on public and click Publish Repository. Now when we are inside our current repository we just made, we're going to click this Open in Visual Studio Code. And that is, as you can see here, opened our, let me make that full screen. It's opened our Visual Studio Code inside of the repository we just made. And we can delete this .git attributes. We don't need that. If you're wondering how I'm zooming in and out the window, it's Command minus and plus on Mac, and it should be Alt minus and plus on Windows. As you can see here, you also have on the welcome screen show all commands shortcut, so you can also see what does what in your Visual Studio Code. The next step on our journey is to install the extensions that we are going to be using inside of this tutorial. So that's this tab here called extensions. And as we can see, I already have 4 installed. This last one is actually not relevant, but the 3 first ones are going to be relevant for this tutorial. So if you don't have them installed already, if you search live server, you're going to find one with approximately 45 million downloads, and you're going to install that here. And this enables us to make any HTML file we have here be able to be run live, so that when we update it and we press save in our Visual Studio Code, it's going to update that automatically on the browser that we are running it on. Otherwise, we would have to be refreshing the browser in addition every time we made changes, and that just slows down the development process. So it's a very neat extension. The next one that we are going to install is called Path IntelliSense, about 12 million downloads, and you're going to install that. This is going to allow us to be more efficient when we're adding paths to different files, when we're linking up our style sheet, as we can see in this video, to our HTML. It's going to basically sense what is going to be the path that we want to link to, which enables us to write a lot less errors in our code and basically be more efficient as well. The last extension we're using in this tutorial is Prettier Code Formatter with about 41 million downloads. And we're going to install that, and that essentially auto formats our code so that when we hit save, we are also basically having our code. I'm going to show you, it's going to be easier. I'm going to create an index.html file. And if I write exclamation mark, I hit enter, we get some code here. Watch now what happens. This is HTML boilerplate code, just some standard starting point. Watch what happens when I hit Command and S to save. That now formatted in a certain way. That is Prettier, that is doing its work. It's formatting my code based on some predefined rules on how things should be indented, how things should be spaced. And basically this creates a unified form of code. And if you want to have your code look the same way as mine, you're going to install Prettier, and that's going to take care of that for you. I also have a separate video on how to set up Prettier for your VS Code. So check that out if you want some more in-depth look on how to set Prettier up. So that is all for our extensions. Now let's get back to the Explorer here tab, where we have our first index.html file. So if you didn't create that, please create this index.html file. This is going to be where we're running our website from. Basically, our calculator is going to live here. And then we're going to be referencing the JavaScript inside of the HTML, as well as the style sheet. And because we have live server installed, we can already click this go live and see our website in action. As we can see, there's not a whole lot to see because it's an empty website. But if we take a close look at the title here, we see that it's called document, and the same is here in the URL or in the browser tab. And if I now change that to calculator and I hit save, we see that it's automatically updated on the browser. Now, let's also close this Explorer tab. If we hit that, we get a bit more space. And let's also go up here into View, and we're going to hit this word wrap. And on Mac, you see that the shortcut for that is Option Z. So hit that word wrap, and that is gonna make all of the code be visible regardless of the width of the screen. So it's gonna wrap the whole code, which makes developing easier for us than scrolling sideways. So this is pretty much how we're gonna be working in this tutorial. We're gonna have our code on the left, and we're gonna have our project that we're working on the right. Let's also hit inspect in the browser so that we're getting our developer tools up here. We have our elements. You can also hit Command+ here to see it a bit better. Zoom in here. And we have our console here where we're going to be able to get some useful info. We have our network tab, not really relevant for this project. And we have our elements, the actual HTML elements here, which currently are not very many. So back into our HTML document, the doc type HTML is an element that basically says that the next element here, which is this one, is going to be of the document type HTML. So it's sending info to the browser saying that, hey, you're going to take this file that I'm sending you, and you're going to read that as an HTML file. We are setting the language in this language attribute to English, again, sending the info to the browser. If you're going to translate that to a different language with some auto-translate, use English as the default from language as an example. Another one is this head that's coming next. We see that the head is nested within the HTML. That's how HTML elements work, and a lot of code works. We nesting some elements within other elements. The head gives a lot of information about the web page that is not visible on the actual page on the screen here, but it does give the title, for example, that we can see up here. So it's not on the page, but it's side info to the page. So in this case, the title shows up in the tab. Then we have some character sets here. Basically, we're using Latin alphabet, standard numbers, things like this. UTF-8, it's a standard of symbols and like A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, exclamation mark, things like this. And the meta name, viewport, and content width, all of this here is basically so that our website scales across different browsers and also different devices. So that it has the same scale, it has the same reference point regarding width and height and pixels, etc., etc. It's pretty standard stuff that basically every single HTML page has. Then we're moving on to the fun stuff. We are gonna actually start creating our two other files, and we're gonna link them up in our HTML. So first off, let's create our style.css file. So we're just gonna leave that blank for now, and we're gonna go back to our index. And then we are gonna, under the title, we're gonna add a link. And as soon as I write link, VS Code is recommending me things. And if I hit the up or down arrow, we see that we can choose different things. So if I go to link CSS and I hit tab, or maybe enter for you, one of those, it's going to already fill out what it thinks I want to link to. So it says link with a relationship of style sheet. That's correct. This is a style sheet. And it's going to give us the href, which is basically what's the location of this. And it's style.css. And because we are in the same folder here, we are basically just writing the name. So that's, if it was in a folder further down, let's say, let's create a new folder just for the showcase, styling, let's say, and I move the style sheet in there, move. Now we see that it is one level below. Then this is not gonna work anymore, but then I can write slash, go into styling, and then go into style.css. But let's just revert that back, because we're not going to set it up like that. Drag it back, move, and let's delete the styling folder and close the Explorer. So there we go. We linked that up. Next we want to add is a script. We want to link to our actual script, which is the JavaScript file. Use the source one, because that's going to say where is this script living. And the same thing, it's just going to be in the same folder, and it's going to be called script.js. Let's also now create that script.js. There we go. And then I want to show you something cool. We're gonna hit log, we get some suggested here, hit tab, and we get to have console log here, which is gonna show up in our log here when we run it. So here we're just gonna say test, and I hit save, and that is printing in our log. So we see that the script is loaded in the HTML. Let us also check if the style is loaded by targeting the body element in the HTML. So we're going to say body, we're going to add a curly bracket, and inside of that we're going to say background, it's going to be red. And we see that that is also being applied, so both the script and the style is actually linked up. Let's delete that. And also here, don't mind what I'm doing now. This is just to showcase something. I want to define an element. I'm going to say let body. You don't have to write this. We're going to delete it shortly. It's document get element by ID. And we're going to say it's going to be called body. And I'm going to go here, I'm going to add an ID, call it body. I'm going to console log body. I'm doing this to showcase a little problem with how we have put our script, how we are loading our script in the HTML. We're missing something here. When I am console logging here, as we can see, the result I am getting out is null. Why is that? Because null means that it's nothing. Whilst body is actually here. If I write something in the body, hello, we see that it's hello on the website. It's definitely not nothing, it's not null. So why isn't that being printed in the console? Well, it's because we've actually forgotten to add something in our script here, and that is the defer attribute. And as soon as I add that, look what happens. Body is printed, and we probably have hello here somewhere. The body attribute is being printed now correctly. Body hello, there we go. The reason that we didn't get it before we added defer is because HTML is run line by line, one after the other, in a sequential order. And when we get to the script, it runs everything in the script. So then, basically we're reading, and then it comes to the script. So then we'll basically imagine it jumps to the script, and now it's going to run the entirety of the script before it goes down to number 9 here in HTML. What is it then actually getting a hold of? Let body equals document get element by ID body. The thing is, when we've gotten to this part in the script, this part of the code doesn't exist yet. So it's like this. So for the script file, it doesn't know that the body exists because it hasn't run it yet. And that is what we are basically countering against in this defer. We are saying with the defer in the script tag, when you read this defer, take that as a sign that there's going to be more HTML after this. So run everything of HTML inside of this document and then run your script, because then now we have the body that is existing so we can actually reference it. So now we know that things are working. Let's Control-Alt, delete that. We're also going to delete this hello, delete the ID body here. So we're all good. We have all the files we need. Now we can actually start writing our HTML. We're going to write and create all the buttons for our calculator, and then we're going to style it, and then we're going to add the functionality last. And if you are wondering how I'm coming up with this calculator, well, it's based on the design that already exists, that was made on Figma, which I have linked to down below in the description, together with the asset folder, everything that we are creating here, the GitHub repo, so that you can compare your code and mine. So we have something to go by. We have the sizes, we have how it's going to scale across screen sizes. We want to be focusing on our coding. Having something predefined really helps that a lot. Here we can see we want to add our buttons. So that's our next step. We want to add all of these buttons here. Where are they going to live? Well, they're going to live inside of the body. So let's switch back to our live server here. And we are going to start by adding a section here in our HTML. This section is going to be basically the first part of our calculator. And that's going to be this part that holds the expression that is now up here in the top and the result that is the biggest number. That's going to be one part. That's how we're going to split it up. The next section is actually going to be all the buttons together. So this section is going to be called output, because that's the output of the actual buttons, which are going to be called the input. So we're going to give it an ID of output. And then inside of here, we are going to give it a div, which is a catch-all HTML element. And we are going to give it an ID as well of expression, like so. We're going to have that blank for now and give it a div with an ID of result as well, blank for now. Or actually, let's put in some numbers just for the sake of it. We're going to hard code here so we can see. So let's say 10 times 10. And that's going to be equals to 100. And let's switch back here. So yeah, there we go. 10 times 10 equals 100. And you might be wondering, what's the point of these IDs? So like, what's the deal here? We wouldn't need to add them if we weren't going to use them later for something. And if we were simply going to style them, we might just use classes. But IDs are very useful because IDs you can only put on one single element, whilst all these elements could have the same class. That's very useful because we want to be able to target individual elements and only target that element at a time. And that's going to come in handy because we need to target and manipulate those elements later in our JavaScript. So that's essentially why you add IDs. The first section is very short, so that's done. And the next one is a bit bigger, going to be a bit more writing. We're going to add a button element. And then this button is going to have a class because we're going to be styling them differently, as we can see here. Some are dark, some are blue, some are gray. This one is going to be called button and then light. These are two separate classes. All the buttons are going to have the button class. And then this one is going to represent the buttons that are light, the top ones here. So now we're creating the C, the modulus, and the percentage here. And then we're going to use a not that common HTML attribute, which is called data. You write data, and then you write whatever you want here, whatever, ever. This is going to save this data as whatever inside of the HTML element. And whenever you do that, you can now access that. It's a very useful way to store values within HTML elements themselves and not like through JavaScript. So now we can store it in these HTML elements and then use them in our JavaScript later. So we're going to call that data action, and we're going to say equals to clear. And that is going to be, what do we want this button to do? We also are going to give it the C. So when you hit the C, here we're going to hit, and then that's going to clear everything up here, just like on a normal calculator. And we are missing one thing here. We're also going to give it a data value. We're going to say C. Because the C button here that we are writing, that we're seeing, is just a visual representation. It's like the logo in a sense. But this is the actual value that we're going to be using and sending to our JavaScript. And that's the action that we're going to be sending to the JavaScript. So when we have this value, this is the action we're going to take. And then the C is just the visual style. Now we're going to take this whole button, and then we're going to hold Shift Alt or Shift Option and hit down. And it's going to copy that whole button. And instead of C, here it's going to be +/-, hit save. That is also going to have the button light class and the data action of negate. Because when we click this, if this was a positive result, like it is, when we click that, it's going to turn a minus before the 100, so it would be -100. If we click it again, it would turn to plus again, and it would continue like that indefinitely. Then we are ready for our next buttons. So same thing, Shift Alt or Shift Option down. Next button is going to also be a button light, and this one is going to have the modulus action percentage, and it's also going to have the percentage data value. So it doesn't look like much just yet, but we have created our first gray buttons together with the expression and result up here. Now to create our divided by here, let's copy paste one more time. And now instead of button light, it's going to be called button blue because it's going to be blue. And then the vision is what it's going to do as an action. It's going to have a slash and a slash copy one more time. The next one, essentially we're going from the left top to the right. So we're going C, negate, percentage, divided 7, 8, 9 times, and we're gonna go like that downward. So now is 7. So that's gonna be button dark. Data action is number. Data value is 7, and then the representation is 7. I'm going to explain that why we are using these different actions more clearly in the JavaScript. But essentially, we want to do some sort of logic when we have numbers, and we want to do other logics when we have each of these. So if we are getting an action number, we know that we're going to do calculations. So if we get data action division, we know that we are going to divide. And that's how we're going to control what we do with each click. Now we can copy this 7 button twice, and we are going to say next one is going to be 8 and then 9. And then we need our multiplication button. So let's make another button here, and this is going to be button blue. It is going to have a data action of multiplication. It's going to have a data value of the star sign, and then it's going to have the visual representation. We're not going to use just something typed. We're going to use an HTML code here called and times and then semicolon. And when we hit save, we see that it turns into this like floating X. So you have a lot of these different HTML symbols, and this one you can find on symbol.css /English/00D7, and you see this symbol. And here you can also search for all of the various symbols that we are using in this tutorial and that you can use in pretty much everything. It's free of use, and this is also can be found in the description below, the link to this. Now let's grab the multiplication here and all the way up to the 7, and we're going to copy that as it's going to be similar. Now it's going to be 5, actually 4, and then it's going to be 5, and then it's going to be 6, and then what is the next thing here? We have a minus. Okay, great. So that's easy to represent. We just write minus and minus. And here it's going to be subtraction. Let's do that one more time. From subtraction button all the way up to the 4 button. Copy that. Next row is 3. Actually, always start on the top. 1, 2, and 3. So those are all numbers. Good. They're all dark. That is correct. And then the last one we're going to need is the equal here. No, the plus. So that's plus. That is going to be addition. And plus. Then let us copy these one more time. From the addition to the 1. Copy that. And now we are creating this bottom row with decimal, 0, back, and equals. So the first one is a decimal. So that's not a number. We write decimal action. It is going to be a dot or period, like so. Then we have a number that is going to be 0 and 0. Then we have a backspace. We'll call backspace for a value. Sorry, it doesn't actually have a value because we are just removing all values. It doesn't need a value. The data action is going to be called backspace, like so. And here we're going to have another symbol. This time it is the erase to the left, which you can also find in the description below. As we can see, we have our HTML code here. Let's copy that and add that in our backspace button. Hit save, and we see that we have our backspace. And the last button in our HTML is going to be blue. It's going to have the submit action, and it's going to have the data value of equals, and it's going to have the equals representation. And that is all for our HTML. Congratulations, we are done with our HTML and we are ready to move on to our style sheet to make this look a bit nicer, because I don't know about you, but I would find this calculator very boring if not functioning. Let's move into our style.css file, and we are going to, on line 1, target our body HTML element, which has all the other expressions, the result, and all the buttons live inside of the body. So basically we're targeting everything we see. And we're going to make our calculator have a height, because by default, if we see here, it's just taking the height that is necessary for these elements to work. And I'm also zoomed in here by quite a lot, by 100%, so we see that it's not taking a whole lot of height by default. I'm still zooming in because it's a bit hard to see before we add all the styling on my big screen here. But we're going to revert that, so it's going to look normal on 100% zoom. So we are going to give it a height first of all, and we're going to say that the body is going to take 100% of the view height. As we can see, now it does. It also has a default margin, which we are going to remove, because otherwise we get this scroll bar here. We don't want that. So we're going to say margin 0. And now we see that the body is taking the full height of the screen. If let's see, it's currently 484 pixels. If I now, let's also just zoom in here so you can see. If I now decrease the screen size and I hover over the body again, here in the inspect, we see that it's 298 pixels. So it's taking the height of the viewport. Then we are going to say display this with Flexbox. I have a separate video for you here if you want to have an in-depth guide to Flexbox, but essentially we are ordering our items. We get a lot of freedom using Flexbox compared to the standard default block layout. So with Flexbox, the default is that things get, instead of vertically aligned, they get horizontally aligned, as we can see here. We have our body, and it has two sections, the output and the input. Did we forget to add that? We did indeed. In our second section here, we need to add an ID called input. There we go. And now we can see if I hover over the first section, it's the output, and the ID of input is the second section. And we see that they have been basically sectioned apart within the body. So the body has two children, and they are taking each their space because of Flexbox. And now if I want to also change the direction, flex direction, because we actually want it to have vertical alignment, or say column, flex direction column, and that puts us back kind of to where we were. But as you can see now, I have more this purple area here. It's all in the flex area, and I can align my items within that flex area compared to with, if I remove this, it's just taking the space it's taking, and I can't really align them. I don't have tools to align them towards each other, apart from setting hard-coded margins and paddings. So Flexbox gives you way more ability to actually give responsive design to your apps and to your websites. So let's continue with, we're going to give some gap, basically some spacing here. That's the primary thing we're going to use the Flexbox in the body for. And we're going to also change the font family of everything here to sans, not dance, sans serif, like so. It's a bit hard to see, but it changes the font. And we're going to give a background color of black, like so. Now it's hard to see the text, So we are going to give the text a color of white. If we open back our design that we are building out from, we see that the background is black here with white text, and it's going to stay white here as well. But essentially we are following the style that we see in the Figma design. So we are lacking a couple of more things. We need to give some spacing here, make things bigger, give the buttons color, of course, and some round borders. So let's do that now. Let's target the section HTML. Both of our input and output is going to be targeted by that. We're going to set the display flex to both of them. And now we see that both have put all their children elements in a basically one after the other in a horizontal direction. We are going to say flex wrap, and we're going to say to wrap, so that when things don't fit on the screen, they're just going to wrap one after the other, like so. And we're going to say flex 1, so that each section takes equal amount of space within the body, as we can see. And then we are going to give some padding, 10 pixels. Let's give some padding around here. That's the green section here. And we're going to say font size to see things better, 40 pixels. So now things are getting very big. Let's revert to 100% zoom. And we're going to say font weight 300. There we go. Then we're going to target the output element, the section with the output ID. And we target IDs using the hashtag symbol. If we were to target a class, we would use a dot. So for now, the output here, we want to also give the flex direction column. And you might be asking, well, haven't we already set that in a way? We set that here. Well, we set the flex direction on the body. So the children of the body has the column flex, but here we are setting the flex column also on the children of the output. So the 2 lines here. Then we are going to justify the content to flex end, like so. Moving them down here. And we are also going to align the items to the flex end there. So justify content and align items, each decide where on the X and Y axis you are placing your things. Then we are going to give a gap between these numbers of 15 pixels, like so. Looking closer to what we have here. Then we can move on to styling the button elements. We are going to target the light. We are going to give them a flex basis of calc 25% minus 10 pixels, like so. What this means, as we can see when I uncomment, or when I comment this out, we are deciding basically the width of these buttons. So saying, I want to make you take 25% of the width. So basically each button is taking 25%. If this is 100, it takes 25% minus 10 pixels. That's why it's a bit more space here on the right side than on the left. As we can see, we have the padding, that's the green space here. But then you also have this purple space, and that's the 10 pixels. The reason we're adding that is because we want to have some space between the buttons, which we're going to get to right now. So we also want to add some margin, 5 pixels. That's the spacing. And I've already pre-calculated this to make it fit. That's why these numbers are not random. I figured out that it's if you take 25% minus the 5 pixels, that's going to work well with the margin of 5 pixels. So everything looks very neat and symmetrical. So you see the pixels, when I hover over this section, you have little dotted lines that show the margins, and then you also have the 10 pixels on the outside. Then we are gonna increase the font size to 32 pixels. Now we can start to read here. We are gonna decrease the height to 72 pixels. We are gonna add a border of 0 to remove that border. We are gonna add a border radius to round out the edges of the buttons. And we're gonna give a cursor of pointer so that when we hover over these buttons, our cursor turns into a pointer. Then we are also gonna give the color of white to the buttons, like so, because we're gonna change the button colors. Then we're gonna target our light button class, which we have added, as we can see here, on clear, on modulus, or on negate and modulus. So they're going to have this more grayish color. So that's what we're targeting now and want to style. So we want to both style it by default, but also when we are focusing on it. Focus, like so. So that when we click it, it gives this like nice effect as well. It gives the same color. Background color for E50 5F. And also this is just colors that I have like found and experimented with. Feel free to set your own colors, experiment a bit, but I found that these look good. Then we're also going to target the light when we are hovering over it. So hover. And then we're going to set the background color to hashtag 8890A5, which is slightly lighter color, as we can see. Starting to look more like the real deal, with a couple of not too many lines of CSS. Then we're going to target the blue, and actually let's copy this whole stuff here, and then we're just going to say blue and blue and blue instead of light. And we're going to change the colors, of course. So it's going to be hashtag, and it's going to be 4B5 EFC for the first one. Then we are writing 798BF9. Looks about right. We have our hover effect on the blue as well now. Cool. Then let's copy paste one more time, Shift Alt down, and now instead of blue, we are gonna say dark. Let me show you a neat trick. If you hold Command and then press D, you will target the next instance of that same word. So now I hit it twice, and I'm targeting all the blue words here. And now if I type dark, I'm changing them all at the same time. Very efficient. These are not gonna be blue. We are gonna say 2E2 F38, there we go. And here on the hover, we're gonna say 50, 52, 66. And now we have the hover here, hover blue, and the hover on the black. And of course, when I click, nothing happens because we haven't written any logic yet. So it's just looking very pretty. And of course, these numbers up here, they're hard-coded. They don't really represent anything. But there we go, and this is all because we used Flexbox. It all scales very well, down to some, like, there it breaks, but this is way below the smallest phones, so it should be looking great on across screen sizes, including very large screens. If I full screen this, and I click that out, it still looks great. So let's get back to our code. We are ready to move on to our JavaScript, because that's all the styling that we need So quite effective styling, and it creates quite a sleek result, if I might say so myself. So let's hop into our script file. And the first thing we are going to do here is we are going to access the DOM elements of the calculator. So what is DOM? Well, DOM stands for Document Object Model, and basically when a web page is loaded, the browser creates the document object model of the page. And the HTML DOM model is constructed as a tree of object. And here we see, if I zoom in here, we see like our parent root document, which is the HTML document. We have the body here, and then, we don't have an A element, but we have sections. So basically, it's a tree of hierarchy. JavaScript can basically manipulate this tree. It can understand what's going on, and we can, as we can see here, change the HTML elements. We can add, we can change the styling, we can remove. So basically, we can do what we want with the HTML thanks to this DOM, thanks to this document object model of the page. So it's a description of what the page looks like. We are using that to create a variable that is going to represent each element on our HTML. So for example here, for the input, this section here, we're going to take a hold of the ID, and we're going to reference that to create our JavaScript counterpart here, so that we can manipulate this input. The way we do that is we are defining this variable, or it's a constant actually, because we're never going to change this. We can change the content of it, but we're not changing the input box itself. And we're just calling it input box for pretty much for fun, and because it describes it pretty well. Document, we're going to go into the document object model, and we are going to get an element by ID. And that ID, as we just saw, is called input. And now, to showcase what we can do, now we can console log, and let's just log the input box, hit save, and let's go back to our calculator, and let's open console. And here we can see that we have our section logged. So it's actually logging the whole input, including all the children inside of it. So then we can remove that, and we are going to create two more constants. The next one is going to be for the expression div. That is this part. So that's the top number. Expression div is going to be equal to document get element by ID, and it's going to be expression, like so. Let's also turn on word wrap, because that's what we gave it here as an ID. Next one is going to be result. So let's copy paste this one, Shift Alt down, and let's just change the expression parts here. Remember, Command D, and write result. So now we have result div and result ID. Then we are going to, number 2, we are going to define the expression and result variable. So here we are using the let keyword because these are expressions that are going to change. We are just defining them as an empty string for now, and let result equals an empty string. Because we are at the start, they're not going to show anything. We don't want to show a number by default. So they're empty strings. And when we start doing calculations, we are going to actually fill this expression and result, and that's what's going to be showcased here as the numbers. The next thing we want to do is we want to define an event handler for our button clicks. So when we click a button, essentially we are running one main function. And that function is going to check which button did we press and what are we going to do now that we pressed said button. So essentially, whatever we do on the screen, one function is going to run, and that's the function that we're going to create now. So we're going to define our function with the function keyword. and we're going to call the function buttonClick, and we are going to take an event, so as an argument here. And what is that event? Well, it's the actual click. So when we click on 8, this button, this element, and that whole event is going to be sent in here as an argument, and that's how this function is going to know what to basically check against. Then inside of that button, we are going to get values from clicked button. So we're going to define a couple more constants here. We're going to say target is going to be equal to event.target. And let's now console log this target so that we can see what's going on here. Also, we need to actually call this function. So we're going to take the input box that we defined up here. That's all of this, all the buttons included. And we are going to add an event listener. And that event listener is going to be of the form of click. We can listen to other types of events, but this one is click. And then we are going to call, when the click happens, we're going to call this function, buttonClick. And then whatever the event was that we clicked on is going to be sent in as an event here into the buttonClick. And that event target is going to be saved as target. And we're then going to console log it. So let's see. If I click 7, we see that we get the button 7. Class name, button dark, data action number, data value 7, 7 number, and the button 8. So we see I get each button I click console logged. How cool is that? Then we can also define a couple of more things. So constant action. We're going to take the action data that we have saved in the HTML in each button, and we're going to save that here as the action constant. So it's going to be target, and then when we use this data key here, and we put action behind, the way we get a hold of that in the JavaScript is we say the target or the event data set, that's the data, and then we can use the action that we chose here. And for the other part, it will be data value, so data set value. So const value equals target data set dot value, like so. And then let's try to console log each of those, action and value. Hit save, and now if I click 7, we see that I have the first one is the target, then I have the number here in a string, and then I have 7 in a string. And if we go to the 7 button here, we see that action is number and value is 7. So that's correct. You can delete this console log. I'm just going to leave it, but you can feel free to delete that. And then we are going to actually set up something called a switch case to control the calculator. And what a switch case is, it's like an if statement. So if something happens, then do this, you know. So we're going to check against some value, and that's going to be this value here. Actually, action, we're going to check against the action. But this can get very complicated if we use if statements. So what is better when you're checking one action here against a lot of different potential values for action, then it's better to write in a switch case than an if. So you don't have to write if this, then, or else, if, else, if, else, if. You simply have a much clearer, more readable form of doing it, but it's essentially doing the same thing. So a switch case works like this. We write switch, and then we write the thing that we are actually checking, which is action. And then we are going to write our first case. So if action has the case of number, Then we are gonna run a function here. So function, like so. And then we're gonna break through this case here. Actually, let's just console log so we have something that doesn't break our JavaScript here. This is what a switch case looks like. So we're checking against action, and if action is the same as number, then run whatever is in here, and then break out of this case, and then that basically breaks out of the whole switch case and doesn't continue down. Because now we can add our second switch case, copy that, paste. Then let's say if case is equal to clear. And let's take back this console log here. So if I press number, we can see that the action is number. So this case is actually console logging test. If I press the clear button here, let's just make it a bit more easier to test here. If I press the number, we see number is console logged. If I press the clear, the C, we see that clear is logged. If I press the modulus here, we see that nothing is actually logged. We're just logging the console log we have up here. But nothing, the console logs inside of the switch case are not firing. That makes more sense if I hide this one now. Clear, 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 clear. Nothing is here happening here. If I press a number, 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 number. So we are inside of the switch case now and seeing the result of this different way of writing an if statement. So let's just remove this part inside of the clear, and also let's change this in the number to the actual function we're going to create, which is addValue. So when we are clicking the 7, we of course want to then actually add that number to something, you know. So we're going to add the value, and we are going to add the actual value that we are getting from the number itself. So when I click 7, 7 is registered on the 7 button. So I'm going to send 7 as a string into this addValue function. Now let's create the addValue function. It takes value, as we can see that we are sending in. Also, it's not capital A, like so. And then, for now, we are simply going to add the value to the expression. So we are going to take the expression that we defined up here, and we are going to say plus equals value. And if you haven't seen that syntax before, it's the same as saying expression is equal to expression plus value, which is just a shorter way of writing that. And then we are going to log the expression. Okay, so let's try that. 7, 7, 8, 9, 4. So as we can see, we are adding more and more numbers to the expression, and we are logging it successfully. Now let's actually showcase that here. Let's show the expression on our screen and not just in our console log. So let's remove that, and let's go back into our buttonClick element, buttonClick function here. And at the end of it, after the switch case, we are gonna updateDisplay, and we are gonna call an updateDisplay function that we're gonna create. We're gonna send in the expression, and we're gonna send in the result. Now let's create that function here. Function updateDisplay is going to take expression, and it's going to take result. And then what are we going to do with it? Easy enough. We're going to call the expression div that we created up here at the top. We are going to go into the text content of that div, and we are going to set that to the newly updated expression. And then we are going to do the same for the result div. We're going to go into the text content, and we're going to set that to the result, like so. And then let me also delete these hard-coded values in the HTML. Save that. save the JavaScript, and let's click 7. And there we go. We see that 7, 8, 9, it's all getting put into the calculator. Perfect. And if I click anything else, we're not really handling those cases, so it's normal that it doesn't work. But 0 works, and all the other numbers work. Okay. The next thing we want to do is not only do we want to now add numbers to our expression here, we also want to be able to clear them when we press the clear button. So if we scroll back up, we see the switch case for clear. Here's the case, clear. Then we're simply gonna call a clear, not clear interval. That's an inbuilt method, but we're gonna call the clear function that we also need to be creating now. So we're gonna say function clear, like so. It's not gonna take any arguments because it's going to be very simple in nature. We're gonna say the expression, take that and just set it to an empty string again. And also we're gonna do the same for the result. Now we are not really using the result yet in the updateDisplay and clear function, but it's gonna be good to have that for later when we are actually putting the expression result into the result. So now if I click a couple of numbers and get them on the screen, I hit the clear button and they disappear. Perfect. The next thing then is to add a case for backspace. So if we want to now press a bunch of numbers, we don't necessarily only want to clear all the numbers. We want to press, oh, I want to have a 5 here and not a 6. Then I would like to press this backspace to remove only the 6. Then let's copy paste this whole case here, Shift Alt down, and let's write backspace like so. And normally we're also going to call this function backspace. There we go. And let's create that function right now. Function backspace. And here we know we want to manipulate this string. As we can see here, the expression is a string, so we're going to use a string method to basically cut off the last part of the string, the last index, basically. And to give you a little advice on how to basically go about researching what kind of methods in JavaScript you could use, well, we know it's a string. We want to cut off the last part of the string. So let's just Google that. JS string cut off last index. So let's see. Last index. Here, remove last character from a string. So we have substring, replace, and that is what we're going to do. The slice method. So let's actually see. Let's go to JS and we go to expressions and operators. And let's search slice array string prototype slice. So the slice method of a string values extracts a section of this string and returns it as a new string without modifying the original string. So this is the one we're going to be using for this backspace here. We are going to write expression equals expression dot slice. So we're taking the expression, whatever it is. Let's say it's 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then we're calling slice on it. And let's see how to use that. So the syntax, index start and the index end. So here we see -4 will just give us from the end 1, 2, 3, 4. And as for this second one, we have 4, so that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So Q is the 5th. Actually, Q is the 4th. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, 4, all the way to the 19th there. Cool. So what we want to do, we see this minus here, basically takes the last part. So -1 would be the last one here. So we want to go from 0, meaning the start of the string, all the way to -1. Saying 0 means this one, all the way to the last number, not including the last number. Let's see if that is working as intended. So let's say 1, 2, 3, backspace removes the last one. Perfect. We can add numbers, we can clear them, and we can press backspace. Amazing. Getting to become a functional calculator. Now let's go back up to our switch case here. We're gonna add the result to the expression, as a starting point if expression is empty. Our expression is empty, like it currently is, but we have a result. So if we have written something and this has become the result, and then we press divide by, we're going to start by dividing by this 898, which is the result and not the expression. It's going to be easier to see it in practice. We're going to take the case of addition. In addition, here you can also do several cases at the same time. Subtraction, like so. And let's just copy these twice. Multiplication and division, like so. And then we're going to have an if statement here nested in the case. If expression is equals to, triple equals, checks the type as well as the actual value. If it's equal to empty string, and result is not equal to an empty string. Let's see. Let's also wrap that up. That's what we did wrong here. And with we, I mean I. If, like so. Horrible formatting here by me. There we go. So if the expression is empty and the result is not empty, is what we're saying here, then we're going to call a function that we should make startFromResult. And then in here, we're going to give the result value, actually. And then else if, don't know why I keep making curly brackets when I just mean brackets, expression, if it's not equal to empty string and is last character an operator, then we're going to call the addValue with the value here. So to explain this whole part, we want to add the result to the expression as a starting point if the expression is empty. So if this is the result, we want to start from that point if we click one of these. If we click addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, these four here on the top right. Then if the expression is, this is the check we actually do here to do that. Expression empty, result not empty. Okay, let's start from the result value. Great enough. If that's not the case, an expression is not empty, and the last character in the expression is not an operator, then we're going to add that operator to the expression. So that means these are operators. So if it's like 1, 2, 3, 6, and the 6 here, that's the last character. If that's not a symbol like divided by, multiplication sign, subtraction sign here, then we're going to add that. So it should be 2, 3, 6, minus should be coming after here. Because we don't want to be adding minus minus, that's what we're checking here. we're checking, is the last character already an operator? If not, we're going to allow to add it. Now let's create these two functions. So let's scroll down. We're going to say function is last character operator, and it's not taking a value. Here we are now going to return is none, parse. I'm going to explain all this in one moment. Parse int expression dot slice -1. So let's break down this isLastCharOperator operator function by starting with the innermost part of the function. So we're taking the expression slice -1, just like we did here. So we already know that this part means that we are getting a hold of the last character here. That's 3. Then the parse int. So this function converts its argument to an integer. So this part. Here, we are using it to check if the last character, the 3 here, can be converted to a number. If it's not a number, meaning if we added a plus, like so, it will return not a number. So this part will equate to not a number if we have a 3 here. If we have a plus here, or a minus. So now this is not a number. If it's only numbers here, however, it just returns the number. So outside of there, we are checking, is it not a number? So if this thing equates to not a number, then we're checking is none on none, which returns true. And if it is an actual number like so, it will return false. So then let's check if we write a number, we write a minus. Remember, we are back here. So if is last character an operator, it is returning true in this form here. And here we are actually negating that. So we're saying, is it not true? So this is going to run, addValue is only going to run if we have not a number here already, which means here I can add as many numbers as I want, but look, I can only add 1, minus, and plus. Look what happens if I now remove this check here. So if the expression is not empty, we're going to be able to add this part. And now I can add as many operators as I want, and obviously we don't want that because this doesn't make sense mathematically. That is why we are doing this last character check here. So with this check, we are only adding these addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. We're adding those as values only if there is none at the last spot. Then let's move on to create this startFromResult value. Let's copy that whole function name, and we're going to create that under here. startFromResult value, and inside of here, we're going to take the expression. We're going to say plus equals result plus value. Easy enough. So let's see. If the expression is empty and result is not empty, we're going to start from the value. Unfortunately, we don't have the equates yet or equals, so we're going to see that in action later. Now we can move on. We're done with this block here. We can move on to the next case. So we want to make a case for the submit so that we can actually see this result here. So we want to call the submit. Let's see. We want to be calling the submit, not submit the mail event, submit, like so. And then we want to say break. And then let's create this function here. Function submit function. And inside of this function, we want to take the result. And we want to call another function that we're going to create, evaluateExpression. And then we are going to set the expression to an empty string. We want to empty the expression when we click the equal sign here. Then let's copy the evaluateExpression name here and create that function as well. So evaluateExpression. So here we're going to create a constant. We're going to call that evalResult, which is going to be the result of calling the inbuilt evaluation function. Eval is an inbuilt JavaScript that basically takes any string that you give it. So if it is a string like this, 3 plus 4 plus 5 minus 5 divided by 2, it's going to basically evaluate that. It's going to run that, and it's going to basically equate that to something, some result. And that is what we're saving here. And that is like how we're putting our numbers together, how we're dividing it. We're calling this inbuilt eval function. But it does pose a security risk, as it will run anything that you give it. So people could, with potentially harmful intent, input their own thing here, JavaScript code as well, and actually basically hack your website or app with the eval function. So there's no danger with that here because we're not taking any info from anyone. Once we have that, we are going to return is none again on the eval result, or is finite on the eval result. What this does is it checks if eval result is none, not a number, or infinite. If it is, return a space character like so. We're checking that with a question here, like so. And then, if it's not, eval result less than 1, parse float eval result to fixed 10, like so, and parse float eval result to fixed 2. That is a bunch of complicated code. I'm going to break that down, what all of this actually means. Here we check if this, what we just evaluated, is not a number, or if it's so big that it's infinite, because we have a separate thing in JavaScript that says if the number is actually like finite. So if it's either infinite or not a number, it means we can't really do much with it. So we're just going to return a blank space, meaning it's not really valid what we've put in, or it's way too big. So it's kind of a check before we move on to the other part of the function here. And if it fails, we return basically blank space. And then we check if the result is less than 1. And if that is the case, we round down the result to a maximum of 10 decimals. And if it's not that, we round it down to a maximum of 2 decimals. And the reason we use parse float is to treat this evaluate result as an integer, aka a number, whether if it was we sent in was a string or not. And this conversion is necessary because toFixed here returns a string. So we're basically getting a string here, and then we're taking it and turning it into a number again in order to use it further in the calculator as a number. So a bit of a complicated code, but I hope that made sense. In essence, this is to return the result and to return them with decimal points. Now let's see the result of our labor here. 1, 2, 3 times unexpected end of input at evaluateExpression. We have our first bug. 84 buttonClick. Let's see, equals. Okay, it's working. Let's try that again. So we only get it, let's see, equals, that works. If we press a number and just put equals, that works. Divided by unexpected end of input at evaluateExpression. at submit at HTML element button click. So we have our submit. We are running the evaluate expression. The expression is turning to 0. That's correct. We are creating a constant. We're returning is none. Okay. This looks correct. Let's go up to where we are calling this actually. It's happening inside of here. 40, submit. We have a case. We have a case. We're missing a break here. So let's, because then we're not exiting this one. Let's try that again. Times 9. Hey, there we go. Divided by 20, let's say. Cool. And here we see we get 2 decimals. Divided by 300, divided by 233, and then when we are less than 1, we get 10 decimals. Perfect. And then can we say -6? We can use this one, backspace, and we can clear. Awesome. Our submit is done. Moving on now, let's copy the case of submit down one time and write the one for negate. So if we have negate coming through, we are gonna run the function that is gonna be called originally enough negate. And then we can scroll down to the bottom here. Let's create that function. Negate. Basically, we want to negate the result if the expression is empty and the result is present. Okay, that's our goal. So let's write that in JavaScript. If the expression is equals to an empty string and the result is not equals to an empty string, then we're going to run some cool code. Result equals, actually, minus equals result. Actually, I don't think that's going to work here. We need to say equals minus result, like so. Then we want to toggle the sign of the expression if it's not already negative and it's not empty. Else, if expression doesn't exist or starts with, let's see, minus. So if the expression doesn't start with minus, let's change this like so. And the expression is not equals to an empty string, then we are going to say expression is equal to minus and then plus the expression, like so. Then we want to remove the negative sign from the expression if it's already negative. How do we do that? Well, we are going to say an else if, and I keep making curly brackets. Let's see. Expression starts with minus. We're going to take the expression equals expression dot slice and then 1. So on the index of 1. So all in all, we are taking the number here, let's see, 20, clicking this button, we're negating it. Clicking it again, we are making it a plus. So we are changing the positive and negative value of this number. How is that working? Well, as we can see, if the expression is empty and the result is not empty, we are running this part here. So let's see, 202 minus 30 equals this. Now we have a result and an empty expression. So we're going to just take the result and make it a minus. There we go. And now if I click it again, we still have just a result. I'm going to make it a minus. So minus plus minus is plus. That's how this is working in this section here. Else, if the expression is doesn't start with a minus and the expression is not empty. So let's do that one. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't start with a minus and it's not empty. Then we're running this one. Then we're just taking the expression and putting a minus in front of it. There we go. Do that again. And a minus and minus equals plus. So that's this one. Else, if the expression, actually that was this bottom line here. If the expression is does contain a minus ahead of it, then we're going to take the expression and we're going to slice off the minus. We're going to start by returning the expression from the index of 1. So that's this part, excluding the minus. And voila, we have a negate function that takes both the expression and the result into account. Now let's scroll back up to our main function here. Let's add another case. This time for the modulus here, this one. And that's going to be called percentage, because when we click that button here, 80 or 800, click that, it should return an 8. If we click 100, it should return basically a fraction of it, divided by 100 basically. So let's create that function now. It should be fairly straightforward. So if we scroll down to the bottom, we create a function, paste that in there, percentage. And the first thing we want to do here is we want to evaluate the expression, else it will take the percentage of only the first number. If expression is not equals to an empty string, we're just checking that first, then we're going to go to the result and we're going to say that that is evaluateExpression. Fair enough. So we're evaluating the expression before doing anything with it. So if we have like this in our expression, we're just calculating that first before we are doing the percentage on it. Then we're setting the expression to an empty string. Then inside of here, we're going to run another if statement. If is non-result. So if it's not a non, basically, if it's a number, and if it is finite, meaning again, it's not infinitely big or small, then we are going to run result divided by 100, basically doing the percentage on it. And then else, we are saying result is an empty string. If it is a non, or if it is a non, or if it is infinite. And then we're going one step out to the original if statement here. Else, if the result is not an empty string, we want to take the result and we want to run parse float on the result and divide that by 100. Because what we're doing here, if the expression is empty, but the result exists, we still want to divide that by 100. So now let's see 7894 percentage 78 percentage 078 percentage. Again, we see that we are dividing by 100. It is working as intended. The last part in our main function now, the only thing we're actually missing is now our decimal. So we're going to add the decimal point here. So here we are going to run decimal function. And let's copy that and create the function decimal. And here we're going to have an if statement. If the expression is not ending with a minus, and it is not a non-expression, slice -1, then we want to run the addValue function, and we want to add the value here. Like so. Actually, we are missing a parentheses there, like so. And then we want to, let's see, we also want to send in the value here into the decimal and in here, value, like so. And then we are breaking. So what is going on here? Well, if the expression ends with a minus, I wrote wrong here. If the expression ends with a dot, because that's a decimal. Here we are checking if it doesn't already have a decimal. We don't want to add a decimal onto another decimal. And also if it's not another operator. So if it's a number at the end. So now we can check 12.2 times 3. Perfect. Divided by 9. Awesome. Divided by 8.13 is 1.9, 0.9. The problem now arises is when I do this, 56 point, and I can't press several times on the decimal. But if I add a number, then I can add another decimal, and another number, and another decimal. And this is going to cause an error because we can't compute that. So we need to account for that. And that's the last step in our calculator here. A bit of quality control regarding decimals. Otherwise, we have everything else functioning. So we are going to go to our addValue function here that we are using. We're going to find that. We can also, if you hold Command and click that, or Shift click maybe. It's Command click on Mac. Then we are gonna do some more checking here actually. And it is a bit verbose, but it is needed in order to check for the decimals here. So we're gonna remove this, and instead we're gonna start with an if statement. If the value equals a decimal, then we're gonna say const last operator index equals expression dot search. So we're searching the whole expression for one occurrence. And here we're going to use something called regular expressions. And I'm going to break that. I'm just going to write it first, and then I'm going to break down what it means. It looks a bit complicated, but it's quite logical. We're going to say slash. We're going to say brackets like so, plus. We're going to say backslash minus star forward slash and then forward slash. What this means basically is everything within these slash bracket here and slash bracket here is we're checking for these things. So we're checking for a plus, we are checking for a minus, and we are checking for a star, and we are checking for a divided by. The reason we have this backslash here is because minus is a valid kind of value inside of the regular expression here. So in order to actually check for the symbol of minus, we need to add this escape character here. But otherwise, we're just checking. These are just like saying, hey, this is a regular expression, and we're checking for this symbol, we're checking for this symbol, and we're saying that it's a symbol and not the actual plus minus star somehow with the escape here. And then we're checking for this symbol, and we're checking for this symbol. So we're searching the expression for a plus, divided by, times by, a minus, and a plus. and we're setting that to the last operator index. Then we're saying const last decimal index equals expression, and then we're going to say last index of, which is an inbuilt JavaScript method that gives us the last index of the decimal symbol. So here we are, let's comment that, find the last index of the last operator in the expression. And then under there, we are checking to find the last index of the last decimal in the expression. And then we're going to check to find the index. Actually, if we just find the index, not the last, like so. Find the index of the last number in the expression. How do we do that? Well, we're going to say const last number index equals math, which is an inbuilt function, max, and then we're going to take the expression dot last index of, we're going to say plus, and then let's copy this down 3 times, and we're going to give all the symbols that we are searching for, which are these 4. And then we are going to check if this is the first decimal in the current number or if the expression is empty. So if last decimal index is smaller than the last operator index, or, and I'm sorry, this is a bit verbose, the last decimal index is smaller than the last number index. So we have written that without a correct camel casing, number, or the last decimal index is equal to -1, and the expression is equal to empty string, or the expression dot slice last number index plus 1 dot index of minus, and then equals -1. If that's the case, then we can run this expression plus equals value that we had in the start. Lacking a symbol here, a bracket, but where? There we go. I was lacking 1 curly bracket down here. So hit save, and then Prettier also does the rest, cleaning this convoluted code up. In essence here, what we are doing is we're checking using a combination of last index of and searching for the regular expression and using the math. We are finding the index of the last operator, the last decimal, and the last number, and then we're checking if the first decimal in the current number or if the expression is empty. All to say, this is an added check to see if we only have 1 decimal and to make sure that we only have 1 decimal in each number. So let's see if that works now. We have also forgotten to add our else statement here, because if it's not a decimal, we want to just add the expression plus equals value, like so, because this was adding the decimal. So 1, 2, 3 dot I can't add several, I'm clicking. 0.2, and I can't add another one. Plus, I can add that, correct. 596, correct. And dot, and I can't add more than one. And I can't add more than one here. So we have one number with one decimal and one other number with another decimal. Equals, and it turns into one number with one decimal. Perfect. Divided by 9 times 8, 616, plus 3, 619, minus 89, 503, modulus 5.3, plus minus, minus plus, times 999, backspace, clear, and 0 works as well. Perfect. Our calculator is done. So if you've gotten so far and you've completed the tutorial, then congratulate yourself. Great job. This is definitely a challenging project if you are not so used to using JavaScript, and it's a very logical project. It's an excellent project to put on your CV to showcase your logical programming skills. Now, to finish off this project, let's put it out on GitHub Pages so we can share it for the world for free. So let's save our all our files here, Control S, and then we can close our VS Code. We can also close our project. Then if we open up our GitHub Desktop, yours might have more code than me because I've saved in between. We basically have all the code that we have added now. So now we're going to go ahead and write a summary. You can write whatever you want here. I'm going to say add calculator. Keep it very simple. And I'm going to push the origin. So I'm going to push that to GitHub. And then I can click this one here, this link, view on GitHub. Then we have our repository here. Now, if we go to the settings here, and we see there is a, let me zoom in for you. So on settings, on our repository, we see there is a pages section here, and we see that we can deploy from branch here. So it's currently disabled. Select the source below to enable GitHub Pages for this repository. Let's see, select main, and then click Save. GitHub page source saved. And now we see our GitHub page is currently being built from the main branch. And then after a minute or so, we see that our page is now live. Your site is live at, then you get this URL link here, visit site. Here we go. Here is our calculator that is up and running from my GitHub page. So let's see. It seems to be scaling well. And then if I inspect here, we see that it is working. Divided by 9, modulus, plus minus, clear. Seems to be doing everything as intended. Congratulations, we now have our calculator running live, and we can share that on our GitHub, on our portfolio, wherever we want. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that you learned a lot. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. And if you enjoyed this video, then I have another one here for you suggested that I think that you might also like. Until next time, see ya.